Today in the tool and machine module, you're going to learn how to use some of the hand tools, and I'll give you a demonstration on how to make a hand tool block. Your teacher will be giving you a piece of wood that's approximately this size. Some of the tools that you're going to be using: scratch awl, sanding block. This is just a piece of hard rubber that holds sandpaper. A block plane. A tri-square. A scale. A hand saw. A brace. And an auger bit. I'm going to start out using the ruler to measure the length of the block. The block's supposed to be 5 inches long, so I'm going to the 5-inch mark on the ruler and place a mark with the pencil right along that mark, going the same direction as the mark on the ruler. Next, I'm going to use the tri-square to draw the line across there. Tri-square has two parts: the blade and the head. The head of the tri-square needs to go against the edge of the wood. Then you slide the blade of the tri-square up along the wood until it's even with your mark. And use the pencil to draw the line across there. Next, I'm going to measure the width of the block. And the width of the block is going to be 3 inches. I'll find the 3-inch mark on the ruler, make a mark on the wood, exactly where the 3-inch mark on the scale is. And again, making sure that the mark on the wood goes the same direction as the mark on the scale. Then again, I'm going to use the tri-square to draw that line. Now, the width of the block is always across the grain, and the length is always along the grain. Next, I'm going to cut this piece to length, which is along the grain, so the line I want to be cutting is the one that goes across the grain, because once I've cut this, I'll then have the block the correct length. Block needs to go in the vise with this line going across the grain vertically. So it's going to go in the vise just like it is here. To open the vise, you turn the handle to the left, place the block in the vise, making sure that the line that you have here extends out past the edge of the bench. And then tighten the vise up. Now make sure that you don't pinch your fingers in the vise. To cut that line, we're going to use the handsaw. And you want to use your thumb as a guide to start the saw. You want to place the handle of the saw very close to the wood, using your thumb as a guide, and then just gently pull back a couple times to get the saw started. Once you've done that, you can remove your thumb as a guide and just start sawing. Now, as you're sawing, the saw should be at about a 45-degree angle to the wood. And you should try and keep your arm in line with the saw. As you get near the end of the cut, you want to flatten the saw out so the teeth are going to be level with the floor. Hang on to the piece that you're cutting off and just take some short strokes to finish up that cut. Now we're going to remove the block from the vise and check it with the tri-square to see if that end that you cut is square. The easiest way to do this is put the blade of the tri-square against the edge of the wood, drop it down, and then let the blade sit on top of the cut that you just made. Then if you hold this up to the light in the room, and if you see any light underneath the blade, those are the low parts that you'll know you need to cut down. Since I've noticed that the end cut here was not quite straight, I'm going to use the block plane to square this up. And to do that, I first have to place the block of wood back into the vise with the end that I just cut facing up. Tighten the vise up so it's snug. And I'm going to be using the block plane to work on this and cut it down so that it's square or even. When you're using the block plane, you want to make sure that you work from the edge of the piece of wood to the center. If you go all the way across, there's nothing to support the grain on the other side and it'll break off. You'll probably find it's easier if you hold the block plane at a slight angle. If you do have to work on the other side, you can loosen the vise and turn the block around. You could walk around to the other side of the piece of wood and stand over there, or you can simply turn the block plane around and pull it towards you. But again, remember that you're only working from the edge to the center. Now I've worked on that a little bit. I'm going to check it again with the tri-square to see if it's square. Now if you look through and you can't see any light underneath the blade, then you've already squared this up. Sometimes it doesn't take very much to square up the piece of wood if you cut it fairly straight to begin with. Other times you may find that you have a lot of cutting to do. If you're not sure, be sure and check with your teacher on this. Now, by the end of the first activity, you should have this piece of wood marked and measured. You should have the end piece cut off, and you should have this end squared up. For the second activity, we're going to complete the block. And we're going to start off by cutting off this side, again with the handsaw. So we're going to put the block of wood in the vise, again making sure that this line is extending out past the edge of the bench so that you don't cut the bench. Make sure the vise is snug, and then we're going to use the saw again to cut that piece off. Again, we're going to start the cut by putting your thumb on the piece of wood, using it as a guide, pulling the saw back a couple times, and then once you've gotten it started, you can take your thumb out of the way. Again, as you approach the end of the cut, you want to level the saw out, hang on to the piece that you're cutting off, and take some short strokes to finish up the cut. We've now cut the block to the finished size, which is 5 inches long and 3 inches wide. The next thing we're going to do is do some measuring on the block to drill a hole in it. As you can see from the drawing, we're going to measure 1 inch along the grain and 1.5 inches across the grain. That'll give us a cross shape on the piece of the wood, which will tell us where the exact center of the hole is. The circle on the drawing shows where the hole will be. I'm going to take the scale and measure 1 inch along the grain, making sure the mark on the wood is the same direction as the mark on the scale. And then I'm going to measure 1.5 inches across the grain. Again, making sure the mark is the same direction as the mark on the scale. In order to draw the two lines on here, I'm going to use the tri-square, and I'll line the tri-square up with those two marks that I made on the wood, and use the pencil to draw the lines. Where the two lines cross each other is the exact center where we're going to be drilling the hole. To mark the center of the hole, I'm going to use the tool called the scratch-awl. And you want to place the tip of the scratch-awl where the two lines cross, and then with the palm of your hand, tap on the scratch-awl. That'll put a small dent into the piece of wood so that the auger bit has some place to start. In order to drill the hole, the piece of wood needs to be placed in the vise. And the cross shape should be facing you. We're going to use the auger bit and the brace to drill the hole. In order that you drill the right size hole, you want to make sure that you get the auger bit that has the number 16 on one edge of the tang. To place the auger bit in the brace, make sure that the chuck has been opened. Drop the bit down into the brace, and then tighten the chuck. The chuck only needs to be finger tight. Next, I'm going to take the point of the auger bit and place it into the mark that I made with the scratch-awl on the piece of wood. And you want to put one hand on the handle and your other hand at the end of the brace, and then start turning to the right. This will start drilling the hole for you. And what you want to do is drill the hole halfway through from each side. So that means you want to stop occasionally and look on the other side to see if the point of the auger bit has come out. Okay, the point of the auger bit just came out the wood on the other side. I'm going to turn the brace to the left to remove the auger bit. Loosen the vise. You can see our hole is partially drilled. I'm going to turn the piece of wood around so that the hole is now facing me. And this is the hole that the point of the auger bit made when it came out from the other side. I'm going to put the point of the auger bit in that hole from the other side and start turning to the right. Now you will get to a point where there's nothing for the auger bit to bite onto. So at this point you just keep turning and pushing until the hole finishes going all the way through. Now this may take some time depending on the grain of your piece of wood. Occasionally, due to the grain, you may have some trouble and you may need to ask your teacher for help. Once the hole has gone through all the way, you can remove the auger bit from the hole and then loosen the auger bit in the brace and take the auger bit out of the brace. As you can see, the hole is now in the piece of wood. The last step on your block is to sand the edges. We're going to use the sanding block to do that, and the sanding block has a piece of sandpaper on it. You want to sand each one of these edges until they're smooth. If it's an edge that you cut with a saw, that one will require more sanding than an edge that you didn't work on. You're going to spend a lot more time sanding than I am here in this demonstration. But you want to make sure that each one of the edges is smooth. And in order to move to each edge, you'll need to open the vise, turn the piece of wood, and then tighten the vise again. Once you've completed the sanding on the block, it's finished, and you can compare it to the drawing in the notebook to see how closely you made it. Be sure and follow the directions carefully, and if you do have any problems, be sure and ask your teacher.